Awesome. Here we go. Hey everyone, I'm Brian Jacobsen and I'm 35 years old now. And in this video here, I'm going to share you my story of the experience of depression. And for me, it was more like mental health issues, misunderstandings. And I'm going to share with you how that had a big impact on my economy, a big impact on my relationships, and it also had an impact on how I handled my school, university, and a lot more. So if you're curious about all that, stay tuned. If not, have a great day. Wish you a wonderful time. Let's get to it. I was asked by someone to share my story in writing, and there'll be a link below for that article later on when that's published. So a little bit about me. Living in Denmark right now, having a business, doing things that I love, and I'll get more into that. Let's get started. So the first question here is how depression started in your life. So the first time I started experiencing a real deep emotional drainage or a loss, sense of loss, was in my first relationship, where I discovered some, well, you can call it cheating, and I'm not here to blame anyone. I'm not gonna go into specific with it, but there's something in the relationship which was not as I expected it should be. Let's say it like that. I didn't expect it to be like that. So when I found out, I got really sad. But at least at that time, I knew how to allow my emotions to be let go, to cry, to even ask for help. So I was quickly back in my tune, going back with life. This would be back in 2004. A first time actually when I moved away from home, ready to embark a new journey, ready to start university, and already there I was a bit challenged because half a year, so that would be 2004 in the March, I had a motorcycle accident where I was thrown off the motorcycle and I broke my foot, in the ankle. So the foot was like sitting up against my calves. But actually in that moment I felt very great. I had no issues with the body or my mind, and I was already pre-decided that I'm going to retrain myself, I'm going to overcome this, I'm going to get back on track with what I love to do, which is at that time I was really passionate about bodybuilding, training, eating well, being physically active, and doing what I love. But a lot of problems came also along the way. So I had an idea in my mind how I would do stuff, and suddenly I was kicked off that motorcycle and everything changed. And there was a big shock to me to be, how can I say that? To be kicked off my path that I already set up for myself. So living by myself, finding out that my relationship is not going as I wanted it to, I'm very sad about that. So that would be my first real something is a little bit off here. So I started university, things are going great. Still being with that girlfriend, by the way. Afterwards we had a talk about it, resolve things, and saw how can we do this, and actually had a good friendship going on after that. At university I was of course challenged. I was challenged in a way that I hadn't been before. School and gymnasium was a breeze for me, didn't really open a book. But at university, some things started to be a challenge. Who am I? How to present myself. Now I'm no longer in the community that already knows my story so far. So that was new. Enjoyed that part. In Denmark, there's some excessive alcohol consumption, so there were times where we went partying and had alcohol and such. Didn't really have an issue with that at that time. But then slowly my relationship started to lose its passion. There was no drive, there's no vision anymore for what we wanted it to be. So we decided to just be friends, and we were in an apartment together also that we needed to kind of get rid of, because we couldn't see how one could just take over the other on a student payment. So that went pretty well, but I found out that when my relationship started to halt in a way, my stability, my emotional stability, also started to be a little bit shaky. So the pressure that came also with the economy starting to change and the expectations of not knowing where I was going afterwards, and not, in my mind, not being able to control it in the way that I've been used to before, that started triggering a lot of stuff. Started drinking more, going out more, getting more attention from doing crazy things or women. Started dating a lot. But still at that time I felt okay. I didn't realize that I had some symptoms of getting off my track. Then when everything was resolved with the apartment and I found a new place to stay, things started to escalate. Instead of continuing on the university, I started to party and have that as a first priority more than the university. I started getting behind with the work that's happening at the university. Also, my interest for poker at the time, I was much more into that. I felt compelled. I felt like I loved to do that. I was excited about it. I loved the idea about being my own boss. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna do that full time instead. Loved the mathematics of it, the psychology, and there's so much to that game. But also there was a hidden factor that it felt easy at first. So that's a little bit to keep in mind. How depression started in your life. So suddenly I dropped out of university and my community started to change. I was introduced to friends who smoked a little bit weed, and emotionally I was curious. I've always been a curious man, always been curious about how everything works in this life and this body, so forth. So I was ready to try it out. And I tried it out, felt great. Not a big deal in the beginning. Started living by playing poker. Still, my relationships, I was dating some girls. I had some few relationships of about half a year's time and such. And there was something in my relationships that was just not working out. Something was just not working out. So lots of conflicts there. I had some side jobs with the poker to secure some income, bartending, and also I had a one room apartment, then I wanted to have a bigger apartment. Poker was starting to do great. And also, I couldn't really have long-term jobs, because if I had one night shift bartending, my foot would be very swollen and it was difficult for me to just walk and especially run. Anyways, my career in poker started to developing. I got good at it, got a new apartment, and then I started to overextend myself. I think that was the first symptom of my depression. Actually, I felt like I was not enough emotionally, so I wanted more stuff, more things, more experiences, more extremes, more on the line. That's really where my depression started. Instead of embracing what I made and continue with methods that already worked out for me, I wanted more. So inside I felt like not enough, right? It was not good enough. So there was an unbalance there. So what were the factors of my depression starting in my life? Well, I was in a relationship there when my poker started to do really well with a sweet girl, and again the relationship had some. I didn't know how to handle other people's emotions, and basically that was my own limited awareness of how to handle emotions. I would just push through. I was a hard training guy, just push through it, just like that. And so when people came with problems like overwhelmed or sadness or fears, didn't know how to handle it, that would create conflicts, even in my friendships, even though people actually knew me at the time. Yeah, so basically some of the factors that started there, the depression, which really kicked in at that time, it was a neglect of my own emotions and taking my time, but it was also a neglect of being compassionate with people, understanding where people come from, even though I often asked my friends, why is this happening? I didn't want it to do it like that. So a lack of compassion and understanding of my own emotions. Basically, that's what started it. And when you try to fulfill yourself, I'll speak for myself. When I tried to fulfill myself with my skill set or my ability to play great poker, or in my efforts, instead of just accepting myself as I am, just here and now, then that image of myself, I couldn't hold it on. And when I made mistakes, you do that in poker. If you're not familiar with poker, poker can go great, and you will have ups and downs. And that's a part of poker. Even though you're the best poker player ever, you will still have downs, because there's a probability, there's a chance, even though you do right in the game. So, and I had I had a job next to, and I was happy with that, paying the bills. But somehow I wanted more, right? So the job started to be in the way. I wanted to go exclusively on poker. And that went great at first. The first couple of months was enormously great for me. About 18,000 total over 2 months, $200 cash game. So that went great. But instead of staying in the apartment, enjoying all that money that I made for myself, I started to get scared of the money, because I wanted to increase levels quickly. So again, it was not enough. And that it's not enough is something inside of me. So that was the main part. The main factor was that within myself, I felt like I was not enough. I needed some validation. I didn't know how to handle my emotions. So when I felt down, I probably had that coping mechanism the whole time in my life, but never really saw it before I started to be on my own feet. So yeah, with the story here, how did I face my mental health issues back then? I started smoking weed, and weed helped me in a way that I felt better, and I continued to take action on for what I wanted. But it started to conflict because I smoked weed when I was also playing poker. And the weed, so my skill in poker was actually to have an emotional sense of where everybody else is at in the hand or at the table. But when you smoke weed, you are influencing that capacity by just feeling great. So I couldn't really recognize when was a good hand, when was a bad hand, in the way that I play poker. So my poker started to go down, and my relationships, I wasn't aware of what's going on, so they started to go down. I started partying a lot more. I started using money that I was not at all capable of using, and I had that elusive sense because, hey, wait a second, I can turn this amount of money, which is about $5,000, into $18,000 over 2 months. I don't have to worry about money. But I still kept spending money, and I was scared of paying bills suddenly. Yeah. So how have I faced that mental thing? Well, first I started to smoke a lot of weed, got into an addiction with it, got into a relationship with a girl. So just to get this story correct, so actually from the money that I earned in poker over the first couple of months, I actually bought an even bigger apartment that I wanted to have, and I extended myself there, right? And in that apartment, things started to be going really shaky. Not at first, not the first half year went great, but something started to go shaky, especially when I was out of the relationship. My emotional stability was just not there. I was just reactive to the environment. People started telling me, Brian, maybe you should take a pause of poker. You're not speaking about anything else, and it doesn't seem to make you happy anymore. Which was something I was like, I'm crazy. I'm not gonna stop playing poker. I need to do this. I need to earn the money. So there was like, from doing something that you love into into an addiction to make a living, right? Yeah. So that started happening, and suddenly one night, the first night we were smoking a lot of weed, playing a lot of games, and suddenly I figured out I lost about $6,000 over a night, which was pretty big for the role that I had to play with. I had about $10,000 to play with at the time. $6,000 was off, and I got a little bit scared because there was rent money. I didn't know how to. I was gambling at the time, even though I was good at the game, but that's gambling. If I start to play even higher limits than I'm supposed to, so something was off. But still, the weed helped me to continue into that rabbit hole without noticing. So that's one of the dangers of weed. So I didn't really face it yet. So what happens is that my economy goes down. I basically go broke. Had to find a new place to stay. Met a girlfriend, and now we're gonna get to. So I had some really good friends. They helped me out getting an apartment. Actually, they offered their own apartment. They were moving someplace else. So I got an apartment and with my new girlfriend there. And at the time, I was starting to experience the mindset of the real victim, right? I pointed at everything in society to blame where I was at. And why things were not working out, and that was definitely society's fault. I wasn't looking in yet, and I still made some great money in poker once in a while, but had to get another job. That was a salesman job. Went down with a lot of stress. A lot of stress. I saw my temper was out of control when I was triggered. I saw my allergies bursting out, which I don't have allergies anymore. Yeah, and the stress, I felt weak. So I quit that job and started to see, okay, how can I have a free time? Still smoking some weed, but no, well, that increased a little bit at that time. Smoke some weed. And it started to be a little bit more every day. But then I decided to, okay, I want to fix this. First, I wanted to fix it in society. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to create a project so people who are fallen down, like myself, they will have a support system that can get them going. But to get them going, well, have a look at 2